Okay, I have a lot of people to thank, all of you for coming out on this kind of first evening of fall evening, and Sarah for persistence. Persistence is so important. Just every summer she'd just show up in my inbox, what about this year? And it worked, finally. And Samita for those beautiful poems. Thank you for all you do in the world. Okay, so it's rainy here in Michigan, and I flew in yesterday, and I didn't get in till late because it was raining. So we just circled. It was okay. I was watching a great airplane movie. Fantastic. We just like circled and circled and circled, and then we sat on the tarmac for another 40 minutes, I think, waiting for a gate. And so then that gave me my reading order. It was great. It was fantastic. I'm going to tell you a statistic in the title of this poem that is just mind-boggling, and so that you don't spend the entire poem trying to figure out how this is possible, I will tell you that the answer is we do less housework now. That's the answer to the question of how this is possible. The average mother now spends twice as many hours on childcare than did her counterpart in 1965. And she also spends 3 times as many hours working outside the home. Or how to sing a song of sixpence when you're really feeling wry. We flew through a thunderstorm on our way into Pittsburgh, landing without incident, but a hailstorm descended, delaying our bags. 40 minutes, 1 hour. When we got into the town car, both the driver and his wife's well-timed pot roast were burning. When he started driving, the baby started screaming. The label peeking from below the driver's cap left a red mark on his scalp. We were the worst people he had ever known. Pittsburgh, late April, cold as we drove past industrial parks outside the city. Cold as the setting sun burnished mirrored buildings bronze. She wouldn't stop crying. I leaned over her car seat, said, "Every person in this car is upset right now. But you are the only one screaming." We drove out of some sort of tunnel. Everyone quiet now, smiling over the yellow bridges into Pittsburgh. She was 9 months old. And it was at that moment that I was like, oh, babies are smart. While we were flying in that hailstorm, it was super bumpy. Everybody else on the plane was like, even the black people were white, you know? It was like, and the baby was like, this is fun, you know? She was just like giggling the whole time, and then she just passed out, you know? Like fell asleep. And on my napkin for my water, because I never did anything but water when I was flying with her. Because, you know, otherwise it's like Coke all over your one outfit for the day. It was the best. So it was like on my water napkin, I wrote this poem. There are these moments of permission. Between raindrops, space, certainly, but we call it all rain. I hang in the undrenched intervals while Callie is sleeping. My old self, necessary and imperceptible as air. That's the poem from your postcard, those beautiful postcards. Thank you, whoever designed those.
Yay, Hans!
So, Yeah, I'm gonna read a couple conversation pieces. In late June, the editor for the New York Times Magazine contacted me and said, we're doing this project called the 1619 Project and writing some poems about what's happened in America and Black America in particular since the arrival of the first ship to bring Africans to what would become the United States. Would you participate in this project? And I was like, sure, that sounds amazing. I already have a poem I've been working on about the 1619 landing. And he was like, we've already got somebody to write that poem. And I was like, okay, well, I have a poem, and he gave a list of moments. I was like, I have a poem about the Birmingham church bombing. He's like, we want new poems. And then I was like, it's the New York Times Magazine. I will figure something out. On brevity. My daughter's 3 months old. A nightmare rocks me awake, and then 14 words. Brevity. As in 4 girls, Sunday dresses, bone, ash, bone, ash, bone. The end. 1963, but still burning. My darkening girl lies beside me, her tiny chest barely registering breath. Had they lived beyond that morning, all the other explosions shattering Birmingham, even some who called it home called it Bombingham. 3 of the girls would be 70, the other 67. Somebody's babies. The sentences I rescue from that nightmare, I make a poem. 4 names, gray-scaled at the bottom of the page. Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, Denise McNair. Revision is a struggle toward truth. In my book, I won't keep the end. For such terrible brevity, dear Black girls, sweet babies, there's been no end. So you want to hear the one that I was already writing about the 1619 landing? What if somebody was like, no? I feel like we should be more careful with our questions as writers. I woke up in early January and I was like, oh, this is the 400th anniversary of that thing that happened in Jamestown. And I started writing this poem, and then it just like, yeah, it got ugly, as poems do. And then, and I was like, never mind, I guess I can't. And then it came to be July, and the anniversary is in August, and something like knocked on my head and was like, you know, now's your moment. If you're gonna honor us, get your pen. So I figured it out. Poem written on the imminent quadricentennial of the White Lion's arrival at Point Comfort, Virginia, which ship carried the first 20-some people, mostly young, who would begin to build this nation with their bodies, black and blood. Rock the other mother's babies down, slowly, slowly, slowly. Maybe for 400 years, slowly, slowly, slowly rock the gone now babies down. You know how a boat rocks on a calm? What rhymes with water? Rhymes with dry your eyes. What rhymes with mothers waiting at the corner? Mothers waiting for the coroner. These babies, their bodies, they've kept them. Hundreds of tears. What rhymes with ocean? Rhymes with empty? Tell me, what rhymes with keep crying? I'll give you something. Today, too, Someone's earth-brown body baby discovered who thought them no better than dirt. What rhymes with snatch a life and name it building? This burden, don't end there. What rhymes with help the mothers love these babies? Help them, help them, help them. Help them rock their stolen babies down. So you know, what you're getting today are 3 new poems. That's done. 3 poems from Trophic Cascade. And a little snippet from Guidebook to Relative Strangers. This is the first poem in Trophic Cascade. We were talking about Virginia in that last poem. I lived in Virginia when Sarah and I first met. And there's a black walnut tree back there, and one of those makes a cameo. So that's like 3 reasons why this poem needs to be read tonight, right? Natural history. The rufous hummingbird builds her nest of moss and spider webs and lichen. I held one once, smaller than my palm, but sturdy. I would have told Mrs. Jeffers from Court Street if in those days of constant flights between California and Virginia, I'd wandered into that Oakland museum. Any chance I could, I'd leave my rented house in Lynchburg. I hated the feeling of stuckness that old city's humidity implied. You need to stop running away so much, Mrs. Jeffers would say when my visits were over and I leaned down to hug her. Why, her words come to me, the woman dead for the better part of this new century, while I think of that nest of web and lichen, I cannot rightly say. She had once known my mother's parents. The whole lot of them, even then in their 20s, must already have been as old as God. They were black. The kind name for them in those days would have been Negroes, and the daily elections called for between their safety and their sanity must have torn even the strongest of them down. Mr. Jeffers had been a laborer, the sort I regret I don't remember. He sat on their front porch all day near his oxygen tank, waving occasionally to passing Buicks and Fords, praising the black walnut that shaded their yard. She would leave the porch sometimes to prepare their meals. I still have her yeast roll recipe, the best I've ever tried. Mostly, though, the same Virginian breeze that encouraged Thomas Jefferson's tomatoes passed warmly through their porch eaves while we listened to the swing chains and no one talked or moved too much at all. Little had changed in that house since 1952. I guess it's no surprise they come to mind when I think of that cup of spider webs and moss made softer by the feathers of some long-gone bird. She used to say, I like it right here where I am, in my little house, here, with him. I thought her small-minded. In the winter, I didn't visit very often. Their house was closed up and overheated. Everything smelled of chemical mothballs. She had plastic wrappers on the sofas and chairs. Everyone must have once held someone as old and small and precious as this. figured out I do have that yeast roll recipe. I am a child of the American West. I really love the American West. It's better out there. But I have to say that the one thing that is not better, particularly in the high mountain west where I live, is the baking. It is really hard to bake when you live a mile high in the desert. So those yeast rolls do not taste as good, you know? You need a little stickiness in the atmosphere to get a quality yeast roll. All right, so this is a section of a long essay. So it's only going to take me about an hour to read. A lot of things happen in this essay. We meet the first major group of white American settlers to enter Northern California. They doubled the size of the community that would become San Francisco, so it went from like 128 people to 240 people. Woohoo! They were Mormons, and the largest population of Mormons outside of Utah was in Northern California. It's the 6th largest Mormon temple. This matters nothing to anything that I'm reading today. Also, you learn about the indigenous populations in California, and that part of California, and you find out why it is that we want to eat babies. But I'm also not reading that part. You have to buy the book to find out why we want to eat babies. It's a fascinating fact. And Maya and I were talking about when we thought we were going to be scientists until our sophomore years of college. Maya's in her sophomore year of college. She is just entering that resolve now. I'm telling you, it's going to work out, okay? Because then you can write about what the scientists, study, and you can make it really interesting. But again, buy the book and you can read the whole essay, but I'm just going to read this part that actually sounds like a poem, because it's a poetry reading. Manifest. I can say that is a hawk, but not red-tailed, red-shouldered. I can say deer, but not white-tailed. I can say robin, I can say raven, I can say bird, but not bunting, wren, warbler. Sometimes Gerbera daisy, sometimes crimson glory rose, but not the name of the creeper that edges my neighbor's lawn or the flowering stands near the car park. I can say blackberry in every season, fruit, flower, and vine. I can say poison oak. I can say watch out for the thistle, but not what the berries are that grow at the base of the park's redwood trees. I can say redwood. I can say sequoia semper virens. I can say California poppy, nasturtium, tiger lily, eastern fox squirrel, like me, not native. I know so much about this part of California, but if I had to make my way to you by naming everything that I encountered, I'd never make it home. I want to say border collie, not just dog. I want to say king snake, not just snake. I want to say aloe and agave, not just cactus, which would, anyway, be imprecise. I notice now, more than ever, what I don't know, and what I want to know, and what I want to share with you, Callie Violet. I want to name the world correctly. One day, this will be your language, and I will have been the first to present it to you. Fennel, blackberry, mustard, plum. I point these out on our walks. We can eat these if we need to, I say, as if naming what could save us might save us one day. Two more. Thank you, White Lotus Farms, for this beautiful, beautiful space, and just for hosting poetry and the word. It's like the intersection between how we name the world and how we think about it and create our ideation and our creativity around it, and then the creation that is this kind of mindful, caring treatment of this that we have. such an important intersection, so thank you for making that happen. It's a garden poem. How great the gardens when they thrive. While wrens, one by one, resuscitate their small portion of the light, yellow buses progress, leave their lots. Goodbye, scarlet fever, help for influenza, penicillin, inoculation, the end of women with their children shut up behind placarded doors. Consider the praise songs we might compose to antibiotics, immunization, the identification and near eradication of microscopic organs that have blinded, maddened, paralyzed, and killed. Yellow as zucchini flowers, and in their season as legion, school buses break and collect at standard intervals along the country's subdividing roads. Late summer, the wind trending toward cool. Early fall, the children heading back to school. In the dream the doctors dreamed, no more measles, mumps, rubella, polio put aside, smallpox persisting only in shelved vials. Loaded up now, shocks dutifully enduring the indignities popped macadam delivers to attire, morning buses ferry our small gambles day to day. In 1920, an American woman had less than a 50% chance of seeing all her children reach the age of 10. Late spring, the wind trending toward warm. Early summer, already burning. Lemons, tomatoes, peaches, zucchini. Some crops are like this. Tended correctly, what fruits they produce, if they produce any, will seem to most of us like overwhelming plenty. I just laughed at myself at the very end of that poem. There's this like ridiculously Californian tell, like lemons. Like, is this a problem on White Lotus Farm, like the overabundant lemon tree, right? It is an issue in California, right? It's a thing that will happen to you, but I bet it's not your cash crop. There's an epigraph to this last poem. A fifth of animals without backbones could be at risk of extinction, say scientists. BBC Nature News. So I'm just going to pause and also thank this farm and its intentional healing of this land to make sure that all those little nematodes and invertebrates and things like that live on and depend on the land and on which we also depend can also thrive. I assume you're not killing all the worms. Making assumptions, but characteristics of life. Ask me if I speak for the snail, and I will tell you, I speak for the snail. I speak of underneathedness and the welcome of mosses, of life that springs up, little lives that pull back and wait for a moment. I speak for the damselfly, water skeet, mollusk, the caterpillar, the beetle, the spider, the ant. I speak from the time before spinelessness was frowned upon. Ask me if I speak for the moon jelly. I will tell you one thing today and another tomorrow. And I will be as consistent as anything alive on this earth. I move as the currents move, with the breezes. What part of your nature drives you? you in your cubicle ought to understand me. I filter and filter and filter all day. Ask me if I speak for the Nautilus, and I will be silent as the Nautilus shell on a shelf. I can be beautiful and useless, if that's all you know to ask of me. Ask me what I know of longing, and I will speak of distances between meadows of night blooming flowers. I will speak the impossible hope of the firefly. You, with the candle burning and only one chair at your table, must understand such wordless desire. To say it is mindless is missing the point. Thank you.